welcome everyone.
Is this an extra one?
I'm just
That's,
checking, you know.
that's a handout, that's for you.
Yes.
So this week that ended today has been a very strange and stressful week in a certain way. Last Shabbos was Pearl Harbor Day.
Yes.
Yesterday, there was this terrible incident that took place in Jersey City, New Jersey. And when you think about it a little bit, on Pearl Harbor Day, the United States was attacked. Why? Just simply because we're the United States. We didn't do anything, as far as I know, to the Japanese. There are all kinds of theories that we threatened their oil supply or whatever. But in the meantime, they basically attacked us just because of who we are. And yesterday, what happened in Jersey City, New Jersey, not very far from where Mindel and I raised our family, was an attack strictly because those people were Jewish. And it's clear that that's what the motive was of those people that did it. They as much as said so. And after it happened, a lot of the residents in the area were seen to be, in a way, celebrating, because they were upset that the Jews had begun moving in.
So I'm here.
You have it on the internet, right? The Jews had begun moving in, and somehow or other, the local people in the neighborhood were upset by that, and they were happy, some of them, that Jews had been killed. So it's a strange thing that people get attacked simply for who they are. So when Pearl Harbor happened, the United States knew how to respond. There was a response. We went to war, and we know the result, that in the end, the United States and the free world, thank God, won the war. The situation that we're in right now with anti-Semitism and the rise of hatred for us around the world. So what do we do? How do we respond? So how do we respond? What do we do? We don't actually have a clear enemy that we can go out and attack, and we're not about to go and hunt them down. But what we're doing here tonight, it's in its own way, you know. What can Jews do to make sure that our lives are going to be protected and safe? And we believe that the answer for us is the observance of Torah and mitzvos. And yes.
Well, I'm not sure that's the only thing we can do. The B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation League brings these people to light, attacks them when they can in court. And I believe that there should be some active reaction, just saying, oh, well, you know, they did this to us.
100%, 100%. When we find an enemy that we can attack, we certainly have to go after them, whether it's through the courts or maybe self-defense organizations, right? We grew up with the Jewish Defense League when Jews were being attacked, and Mayor Kahana and all that, and that's certainly an important thing. But my point was that mention needs to be made of what's going on, that we are hated in the world, some of us, strictly for who we are and what we stand for. And we need to be strong and confident and proud of what we are. And part of what we do, this study that we're engaged in, it's fun for me because of the knowledge and the mental exercise and so on, but it has another dimension. And we said it before that the sustenance or the maintenance of Jewish communities is based on the study of Torah, and specifically the study of the Talmud within the Jewish community. So we're doing that, and Jews around the world in another 2 weeks are going to be celebrating the completion of the entire Talmud. Huge celebrations taking place, and that's something we need to be proud of and happy about. But I just wanted to make note of it, because I just wanted to mention it because it just happened, and you don't hear too much being said about it, and I wanted to just think about it a little bit, not to bring everybody down, but to know that this is going on in the world, and somehow or other, somehow or other, what it is that we're doing here, I believe makes a difference. So, to get back to the subject of getting along with neighbors, and here we're talking about Jews and other Jews, and how we manage to get along with each other. So if you take a look at your handout, we are studying the Masechta Bava Basra, and we are on page Vav Amud Aleph, 6a Bava Basra. You have a little pink flag on the Hebrew side and a blue or green one on the English side, so you can see the Hebrew and also the English translation. And if you're following us online and you want a copy of the text, I'll gladly send it to you. Just email me through the app. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says in the Amar Shmuel, Gag hasamuch lechatzer chaveiro. So suppose you have a situation. We've been talking about cases where there are boundary lines between two properties or two roofs facing each other. So suppose you have a situation where you can picture, I don't know, if you go to Tzvat, you go to Safed, you see the uneven properties, right? It's possible to have somebody's courtyard next to someone else's roof. So if you have a situation like that, where the yard of one person is on the same level, basically, with the roof of the next person. And you do see that everywhere. So what do you do? What is the requirement? So the Gemara says, Oselo ma'aket gavoa arba amos. So the person who has the roof has to build the roof 4 amos high. What's the reason that we talked about? Why do we build a wall 4 amos high?
People shouldn't fall down.
Privacy.
For privacy, right? So what Heshi just said about people falling off, that is a requirement. If the roof of your house is a flat roof which is used, and they did in some cases use the roof, but if they didn't necessarily use the roof as living space, so if it was used as living space, you're obligated as the owner of the property to make a parapet or a wall around it. But even if not, if your roof is overlooking the other person's courtyard next door, so you're obligated to construct a wall 4 amos high, which is about 6 to 8 feet high, and it's for privacy, because we're all entitled to privacy, and you're looking into my yard is in some way doing damage to me, and in order to prevent that damage, you have to build that wall. Okay, so avo ben gag legag lo, but if it's 2 roofs adjacent to each other, and this is a case where roofs are not really being used, so basically it's your property next to my property, but neither one of us is using it. So in that case, it's not necessary, right? Because there's the fact that my roof is there has no effect on you. So there's no reason for you to build such a wall. Rav Nachman didei amar, Rav Nachman himself said, "Eino zakuk la'arba amos, avo zakuk l'mechitza asar." So he says that in the case of the roof overlooking a courtyard, it does not necessarily have to be this 4 amos high. It's basically, it has to be more or less as a boundary, so that in case your neighbor were to step over onto your property, it could be clear that he's doing that, and he's not allowed to just walk into your property without your permission. And so the only way you can delineate where is your property line is to have some sort of a physical barrier. But he says it does not necessarily have to be this 4 amos high. It can be as high as 10 tefachim. A tefach, a hand breadth is about 4 inches or so. So it'll be about, instead of 40 inches, 40 inches for 10, or 4 amos, about 6 feet. So it's a couple of feet lower, and that's basically so that you can identify what is the property line between the two properties. Lamai. So Rav Nachman says, what's the reason? Why do you build this delineation? Ela has a griya if you're concerned about the damage that one could be doing to another by looking in, right? Overlooking or invasion of privacy. So if that's what your concern is, arba amos binin, you need to have the 4 amos, right? Because that's the standard. The standard is 4 amos, which is the average height of a person. So you're not going to be able to look over without making some effort. So therefore, that's the standard height. So if that's what the reason is, then it needs to be 4 amos. Or if what you're trying to do is to show what's your property line, so that you can recognize if your neighbor's trespassing, right? So if there's no marker, you can't tell if he's actually trespassing. So in that case, b'meseifam ba'alma tzagi, you just need any kind of barrier at all. Maybe it's something out of sticks or reeds or something. It doesn't necessarily have to be any kind of elaborate wall, just something that shows this is where my property ends and yours begins, and you don't have a right to be in my property and without my permission. So, or if you're concerned that little animals might jump over the fence that you have there, so in that case, you'd carve bavas rosh osagi. So it has to be high enough that they can't jump over, and that's even a lower size, because you picture a little goat or a lamb, they're not going to be able to jump over something that's 40 inches high or 72 inches high. So the Gemara asks, what size, what height does this fence have to be, simply as a barrier? He's olam l'nit basulav kagana. So what the Gemara says that we have to make it clear that he's trespassing, if that's the case, and therefore the barrier that we make, the wall, the separation that we make, would have to be something that can indicate that. So, b'meseifam matzi mishtamet lei. So he might say that he was just like stretching, he wasn't really trying to reach over into your property, he was exercising, or whatever it is. So when you have this kind of separation, in that case, b'mechitzas asura lo matzi mishtamet lei. So if it's at least this height of 10 tvachim, he can't pretend that he didn't know that he was on your property. So therefore, they say that's the purpose of it, and it's got to be this 10 tvachim high. Next, so the Gemara says meisvei. They're going to ask a question. So if his courtyard, his yard, was higher than the other person's roof, right? And again, we've seen these kind of cases where houses are built on a hillside, right? So you can have somebody's roof lower than the other person's yard, right? That certainly can be. Ain is cooking low, so he's not required to do anything about it, because if his yard is higher than the other person's roof, so the assumption is the other person is not using the roof for living space. So if my yard is overlooking his roof and he's not really using it, there's no real reason for me to do anything. So my love ain is cooking low. Klal, you're saying that he does not need to do anything at all with his roof. So the Gemara says ain is cooking low arba amos. It doesn't necessarily. The Gemara says you do have to do something to indicate where your property lines are. So, but it doesn't have to be this 4 amos high, which would be to protect privacy, right? That's not necessary because the roof is not really being used. But you have to build this 10 tefach high barrier. So again, it's basically to prevent your neighbor trespassing into your property. So you need to build something to indicate where your property starts and where his property ends. Itmar, shtei chatzeros zu l'mala l'zu. So now suppose you have 2 courtyards, one higher than the other. They're adjacent to each other, but one is higher. So you've seen properties where it's terraced, like I don't know, picture rice paddies, right? They make these terraces, one higher than the other. So let's say somebody's courtyard is higher than the other. So Amar Rav Huna, tachton bona mikenegdo va'ola. So the owner of the lower yard has to build the wall separating them. Okay, and he goes upward. Ve'elyon bona mikenegdo va'ola, and the upper one builds the wall from his level and upward. So in other words, you want to have the wall high enough that the person in the upper yard can't look down at the person in the lower yard. So if you can picture a hillside, normally we have some pictures, but if you can picture a hillside, so now if I'm at the upper level and I want to build a wall, I need something to support my wall, right? I can't just build it in the air. So I need the person in the lower section to build up to my height, and then I go from there, right? That makes sense? Okay, so that's kind of the requirement. So, right, Amar Rav Huna, tachton bona mikenegdo va'ola, va'elyon bona mikenegdo va'ola. So the lower one starts at the bottom and he builds up, and then the upper one starts at that point and he goes up higher. Rav Chisda Amar.
If the upper courtyard
Right.
doesn't really need to build that side wall between the properties because the lower one can't see up into his courtyard.
So So that's a possibility, although it is possible you could step back a foot or two and you could see what's going on up there. So his privacy rights could be affected as well, but certainly the upper one can look down into the lower one. So the point is that each of them has to respect the privacy of the other, and there's no way for that upper one to build a wall without some help from the lower one. He can't do it because he can't. His wall can't be supported unless there's something underneath it. So that's why Rahuna says the lower one builds up to his level, and then the upper one takes over. So Elyo Messiah Lamata Lavona, and the Uvona, and the one in the upper, because he's really one who's more required, because he's the one who can look down at the other one. He's got to help out the lower one too. So he's got to contribute to the cost of the lower wall, because that lower wall is he needs it in order to build his upper wall. Okay? So Tanya Kavaseda of Chisda. So we're bringing a brisa, which is a statement of Tanoim. Remember, the Tanoim preceded the Amoraim, so therefore they're more authoritative. So now, if we can bring a Tana to support the position of an Amora, that makes his position all that more strong. So we have a Tana in a brisa supporting Rav Chisda. He says, Shtei chatzera zulam alal mizu. So let's say you have 2 yards, the same thing we're talking about, one higher than the other. Lo yomar elyon, hareini bona mikanegdi v'oleh. The upper one can't say, I'll build from my level and upward, because he can't. In other words, he can't say that it's your job to build the lower part. I'll go from my level and up. But he has to. He's ella messiahli milamata uvona. He must assist. Assist means either materially or financially. He's got to help him with the lower one. And the Gemara doesn't really specify what proportions they have to pay, but I guess you could kind of evaluate by the heights and so on. But basically, he's obligated to participate. But if his courtyard is higher than the roof of the neighbor, in that case, eno zakuk. In that case, doesn't have to be concerned about it, provided, of course, that the roof is not being used for living space. So if there's nobody living on that roof and it's just his courtyard overlooking that roof, he doesn't have to be concerned about building anything.
What do they define as hand breadths? What's a hand breadth?
Hand breadth is what they call a tefach, and it's actually the width of 4 thumbs. So it's like a fist, but it's not really a fist. It's the thickness of 4 thumbs. That's what a tefach is. So the easiest way to translate is hand breadth. That's not exactly accurate.
Yeah, that word doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So it's basically 4 to 6 inches, depending on if you've ever seen a picture of Muhammad Ali's fist, it's very big. But Tova's fist is a lot smaller. So, but it's typically 4 to 6 inches.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's an interesting one. So if you've ever seen, well, here we are, right here in Century Village. This theoretically could happen. It's not gonna. It can't happen, but because of building codes and the condo rules and so on. But if you have a case, Hanu Beit Trade, I have a diary. So you have 2 people living in a 2-family house. It's a 2-story house, one on the lower level, one on the upper level, right? Chad hava dair ilai, v'chad haya davar dair tachtoi. One is above, one is below, right? So we're in 1055. So upstairs we have 2055. So there's a 3055 and 4055. But let's say it was only 1055 and 2055. And here we are. We're sitting here. We're watching Fox News at night, and all of a sudden, the ground is soft. It's a heavy rain, and the property begins sinking. And our building begins to sink. The walls start sinking, or the beams in the ceiling start coming down on us a little bit. They start sagging. So what happens? So the lower story began to collapse. So let's say my ceiling starts coming down. And I'm sitting there, and my ceiling is coming down, and I holler up to Bernie upstairs, Bernie, this is no good. You can't have, your ceiling cannot be, your floor is collapsing on me. I can't live like this, after all. So the lower one says to the upper one, Tov and Nivnia, he said, let's knock this building down. and start over and build it strong so we're not gonna have this problem anymore. Right? Makes sense. Amar lei, so Bernie can turn around and say, hey, I know shop here, I'm happy, I'm comfortable. I don't need it. You know, your ceiling is coming down. Well, it's still okay for me upstairs. I don't need to get involved in your building project. So therefore, you know, you're gonna have to live with it. So Amar lei, so now if I turn around and I say to my neighbor upstairs, wait a second, this is no good, I can't live like this. But I understand your point that you're basically satisfied where you are and you're comfortable. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll demolish the building and I'll rebuild it. I'll pay to take this building down and rebuild the building. That sounds fair.
Who says this to who?
So I say to Bernie upstairs, okay? I say, Bernie, I understand that you see no point in going through the expense of doing all this, and I'm the one really who is having a hard time here. I'll pay to knock the building down and rebuild it. I'll build it according to the 2019 building codes in Florida, and we're gonna be in good shape. So then he says, Amar, wait a second, Leslie Duchtel Lemederba. So Bernie says, well, where am I gonna live? While you're rebuilding it, you know, if these contractors down here, they tell you they're gonna be done in 3 months, and it doesn't work that way. And Bernie knows that. So he's, I'm not gonna, where am I gonna live in the meantime? Amar lei. So I turn around and says to him, Ana oger lach duchta, I'll rent you, you know, we're living in C, I'll rent you an apartment in B, right? Jerry told me there's an apartment near him that's empty. Bernie can go live in there. While I'm busy rebuilding our section. Amar lei. So Bernie says, lo tarachta, I don't want to be bothered with bringing it, with packing and bringing a mover and unpacking and all that. I'm not interested in that. So law comes Mr. Lee, I'm not gonna do that. So, and then he says, not only that, so I turn around and say to Bernie, I can't live in this situation where we are now. So what am I gonna do? Is it shuf for all? So the owner of the upper one says, look, if it's low and it's hard for you to get in, well, you're gonna have to just bend over and kind of creep in. Because you can still, you know, you can sit down, you can lie down, it's hard for you to get in, hard for you to get out. That's kind of your problem, you know, and it's not my fault, right? So b'shuv achra seifel folks. So you gotta bend in to get in, bend down to get in, and bend down to get out. So Amar Rav Chama, so Rav Chama says, wait a second, Bedina kama akid. He says by law, the person living in the upper story can prevent the one in the lower story from rebuilding. He can say, it's too bad, it's your problem. I'm satisfied. I see no reason for me to move or anything else. I'm staying where I am. And according to Rav Chama, that law is the law. So Vahani Mili, Dilamata B'Shure Lamata Me'asara. That's provided that it hasn't sunk so low that it's less than this 10 tefachim, at 40 inches, 10 handbreadths, 4 to 6, so 40 to 60 inches high. So as long as it hasn't sunk to the level that it's less than that height, the upper one can say, sorry, you have to just suffer. But aval mata kashur lamata me'asar. However, if it's already sunken to the point where it's impossible for that lower person to live in there, matzi amar lei. So then the one in the lower house story can say to the owner of the upper story, he's lamata me'asara rishusa diri. He says below 10 is really my property. In other words, I have the right to demolish it if I want to. You can't stop me. Because lower than 10 tefachim, that you have nothing to do with that. So you can't affect what I choose to do. So if I want to start demolishing it from the bottom, you can't stop me from doing that either. Say, hu v'lo mishabalach. And I'm not required to support your upper story. Because if I want to start demolishing the bottom of the bottom walls, I can do it, and you can't stop me. So now what's the situation? And I'm surprised that no lady has said, well, why didn't they work it out, right? all these other cases that we've had in the last several weeks, the women have always said, why couldn't they talk to each other? Why couldn't they solve it? Why?
David,
Because
it's
the
3
guy-
elections.
3 elections
Yeah.
this year, right. They're about to have a 3rd election now, right? Exactly right. No female candidate for prime minister. Probably if they had a female candidate for prime minister, it would have been solved already.
Right.
They'd work
Should
it
make
out.
the chicken soup, right? Right. So, Vahani Mili, the lo asnu gabi hadai, that all these cases pertain where they never had an arrangement in the beginning. So, but if when they had purchased, let's say they purchased the house together, or maybe it was a 2-story house that I owned both stories and I sold the 2nd story to the person above me, or vice versa. At that time, we could have made an agreement. We could have said, if something happens to make this building unstable, then we're going to share in the cost of rebuilding it. So if we made such an arrangement, in that case, it would have been terrific. So, asni gabi hadadi sasru rabbanan. And if they had made such an arrangement, well, then the rabbis would just enforce the arrangement, demolish the building, rebuild it, and go on from there. So, let's say they made such an arrangement. So if they did make such an arrangement, and the arrangement said that if the lower story becomes difficult or uninhabitable, what does that mean, right? How do you define uninhabitable, or how do you define uncomfortable, or whatever term they might put into the contract? So Amar Rabbanan, Kamei de Rabba, Mishmei de Rav Zutra, Berei. So they said before Rav Zutra, Berei de Rav Nachman, Gamar Mishmei de Rav Nachman, and all these people are quoting Rav Nachman. Ka'osa Shoshaninu, just as what we learned, Romu Kachatzi Orcho V'Chatzi Rochbo, that when you build a building, the height has to be it has to be like the half of the sum of the length and the width. That's the height. So Amale Rabba, so Rabba says, wait a second. He says, Lava Mina, I can't believe what you're telling me. He's Lo Tichlu Be Buki Sriki Rav Nachman. You're basically like hanging empty bottles on Rav Nachman, because that's a ridiculous argument, because that might work in some huge building, but if you take a look at the height of our room right here, that doesn't work. I mean, if you take half of the width and half of the length, that's a lot more than the height of this ceiling, right? So you can't use such a formula, which actually was the formula in the Beis HaMikdash. That's where they get this from. But that doesn't necessarily work in regular living spaces, and it's not going to be the case in our new shul that we're building. So, Hachi Amar Rav Nachman. So what Rav Nachman says, Ki Dari Inshi, it has to be in a situation where people are comfortable living there. The comma, and what does that mean? How high is that? Amar Rav Huna Berei Rav Yeshua. So Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, said, Ki Hechi De'ali Isturtui the Mechuz of Ahadr, that it has to be high enough that somebody can bring in, either on his head or on his shoulder, a bundle of reeds from the choza and turn around in there. It's got to be comfortable. So it's basically a local standard. Whatever people are comfortable living in, that's kind of the standard that they use when they build a house. So okay, so we've covered walls, we've covered roofs. So what other feature do we have in houses pretty commonly? Windows, right. So what about windows? And I think I hinted to you last time that we're going to talk about air rights and sunlight and all that. So here you have a case. Hahu gavra gava bone ashisa achure kavi dechavri. So you have a situation where Dov is sitting very comfortably in his house, and along comes David, and he builds a house right opposite Dov's house, and the wall is blocking Dov's sunlight. Dov was enjoying sitting there getting the sunlight in the morning, and he wakes up one morning, there's a wall, and there's David sitting there with his hammer, and he's putting the wall up, and Dov is, what happened to my light? So it's Amar Lei. So Dov says to David, he is Kama Aflasal, you made it dark for me. You don't have a right to do that. I've been enjoying this building the way it is with the openings and the light coming in. You made my house dark by what you did. Amar Le, so David he feels bad about it, really. He's not saying, too bad about you. He sees Dove's point. He didn't think about it before he started building, but here it is now, and he says, you've got a point. Let's see how we can work this out. Of course, they didn't work it out in advance, right? Like the women would have, but okay. He's going to try to arrive at some sort of a compromise. He says, "Sacharna lach va'avidna lach kaveh la'ayel me'ashiso." What I'm going to do is these windows that you've been used to having in your wall, let's close up those windows, and I'll make new windows above the height of my wall. Right? So let's say, the Dove's windows are what is a typical window? 21 inches off the floor, whatever it is, and David built a high wall. So he says, we'll close up those windows, and I'll make you new windows. It'll be a higher location, but it'll be higher than the height of my wall, and you'll have sunlight again. Right? Sounds.
There's a few difficulties there.
Don't try to help him. You're.
No. The difficulty is, was he built to the lot line, and I'm entitled to build a house to my lot line?
The lot line is not coming into play
Doesn't
here.
make a
It's
difference.
basically an issue of the light, that he's had this, don't forget, we're talking about situations where he's been enjoying this house for a long time, and you've by your building, your property, you are adversely affecting him. So,
But if I'm building by right,
if you're building by right, we're actually gonna get to a case of that too, but it's a little bit more complicated. So,
and
basically.
what you say about higher windows,
Right.
my house is gonna be as high as his, if not higher, if I'm building a two-story house.
So how high do those windows have to be?
Me,
Okay, so you're giving an argument for him, which is very nice of you. You're the neighbor that's the offender.
take
But-
any side.
So you take both sides. So what does Dov say? What does Dov answer back to David? He says to him, Amar le kamaris le lashisa. So what you're doing is when you do this, you're going to damage my wall, because you're going to cut a hole in the upper part of my wall, and that's going to weaken that wall. So I don't want that. I mean, you're going to close up the lower ones there's no light coming in, okay, but by making holes in the upper part of my wall, you're going to do damage to my wall, and that's not acceptable to me. So Amar le, so he says to him, Sasar lach vashisa aduchta kaveh. So he said to me, you built I'll just knock your wall down. Ubanina lach vavi lach kaveh bivinyan el meshisa. So I'll tell you what, I'll just knock down your entire wall, and I'll build you a whole new wall with new windows in it above my wall. So I won't be making your wall weak, because I'll build you a whole new wall. How's that, though?
Gonna build a whole new house.
Yeah,
So Dov's not so happy. He says, Amar le, Ashisa metata atika. So what's going to happen here? He says, you're gonna make my wall, it'll be new on top and old on bottom. It's gonna be weaker. It's not gonna endure. It's not gonna survive. So Amar le, so I'll knock it down all the way down to the ground, and I'll build you an entirely new wall. So what do you say, Dov? No good. You're not going to accept it, right?
No,
He
I'll give you
says.
the skylight.
He says.
If the windows are so high,
Va'vidna Allah kaveh b'kaveh. So I'll build you a whole new wall, and so the windows will be above my wall, and you got a brand new wall. You can't say the wall is weak. It's a new wall.
but before he was able to sit in his chair and
Right.
look out the window.
Right.
Now he's gonna sit in his chair and
The
You can't
windows
see
are up
anything.
He's gonna say
there.
he's in a jail cell, right, with the window up high.
He'll have light, but he can't see
He'll
out.
have light. So for whatever reasons, Dov's not complaining about that, but he is complaining that his wall has been made weak. Right, it's a weaker wall. So now David says, I'll build you an entire new wall from the ground up. Amar le, that's no good. Why not? Because chada ashisa chada tabakule besa atika lo kaima. The house has 4 walls, right? And if you're gonna, when we built an addition onto our house up in New Jersey, and we had to make the brick match, you know, because the brick matched the other, but the joint between the new house and the old house, it never works. It never works because the old mortar will not adhere to the new mortar. It won't work. So Dov says to David, hey, I appreciate you want to help me out in this situation, but it's not going to work because you're going to put up a new wall connected to this old house, and what's going to happen? The joint will not work, and the old house, the old walls will begin to sag, and it's not going to survive. It's not going to hold up. So Amar Lei. So okay, so David is really trying to solve this problem. He says, I'll take down the entire structure, I'll take down the entire house. I'll build you a brand new one, a brand new house. So what do you say, Dov?
Okay.
Dov is still not happy. He's still not happy. He's
Yeah,
Amar Lei.
Brand new house?
Amar Lei, Leslie
Thank you.
Dukta Lamedaba. Where am I gonna live in the meantime? Right? So now,
Move in with David.
Yeah.
right, live with David.
I'll build my house a block away.
Oh, you build him a new house,
A block away, and then, but I'll own that one, I'll tear it down.
right? So he says, where am I gonna live in the meantime? Amar Lei, Agina Loch Dukta. He says,
Well,
I don't want to bother with moving. You might want to build me a house a block away, but that means I got to pack up all my stuff, and I got to get a mover, and the movers lie. You know, they tell you it's 200 cubic feet, and it turns out it's 300 cubic feet, and I got to deal with that, and then I got to wait for them to pick up, and they can't come into Century Village with a small truck, and you know
Yeah, with a
they
big
want to.
truck.
With a big truck, right, they wanna come in with an 18-wheeler from New Jersey, which we're going through right now, and we have to wait another 4 or 5 days. I don't wanna bother with all that, and the packing and the unpacking, he's lo taricht, I don't wanna do it. So Amar Rav Chama, so Rav Chama says, Bedin kama akev. The law is with Dov. That basically Dov can say to David, you built up this wall, you're blocking my light, the wall's gotta come down. And the rabbis are gonna say, you can't, if he's not happy with any of the compromises you offer him, he's not obligated to accept it, and you can't block his life. Yes, Jill?
So what happens in real life?
In
For-
real life, in real life, you have this happening all the time in New
You
York
have to go to
City.
Bezdin?
So you'd go to Besdin and hope that people are gonna go
Because
along
the
with it.
government won't.
Well, so you have court cases all the time
Yeah, but they're
in New
not gonna
York.
follow this.
Well, but these concepts are not new concepts. So when you read in the paper that somebody had a view of the Hudson River, right? And then an apartment house came up between his building and the Hudson River, and they're in court, this is what it's about.
They lose,
What?
they lose.
Not necessarily,
cases
not
like that.
always.
At the beach in New Jersey, it's a problem all the time. You have homes that are a certain amount of distance from the beach, and then they come up and they put these big towers right on the
Probably happening
beach.
in Miami as we speak.
Miami?
Yeah.
Well, in New Jersey, you had the sand dunes, right? That's what it had, after Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
So the state came in and they said they're gonna build sand dunes between the homes, they're gonna replenish the beach, then they'll build dunes between the homes and the ocean. And a lot of the homeowners didn't accept it. A lot of the homeowners said, it's blocking my view. I paid all this money for this house, and now this dune is gonna block the view.
It happens.
So, it took a long time.
It happens in Borough Park all the time.
Okay, so how
There's
it
no
works
sand dunes,
out,
though, in Borough
how it
Park.
works out in court is another matter, but the fact is that, you know, they say, Ein chadash tachat hashemesh, there's nothing new under the sun. So the same situations that we're seeing today with air rights and light and all that, and blocking the view from the ocean, this is something that's happened all through history, and it's gonna continue to happen, and next week we're gonna get some new cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you.